because I asked you this the other day. I said, is it better to just completely start from scratch or try to keep as much as you can of the original? Because I don't know.
I thought you were talking about relationships when you asked that.
Oh.
I thought there was like a new guy and you're like, is it better to like, I'm just kidding. It's a joke.
There's not.
Is all that I will ever do.
Welcome to Filmmakers Making Films. What up? This is Island. So we're going to be welcome back. We're glad you're here. We're going to be going through a couple pieces that we just finished and released last weekend. We thought it'd be cool to just jump right into it. We're going to talk about the pitfalls, the literal falls. That was clever. I didn't even think about that at the time. We're going to talk about some of the difficulties and also how we sort of figured it out and went through the process. So what do we want to start with? We did two different pieces. One, we'll show you a quick clip from it right here. What do you guys remember? What do you think of when you think of that shoot day, that edit, all that process?
It was a lot. There was just so many different locations. It was like, how many? Like 10 different locations. They're all in the same city, but it's just a lot of shooting.
We basically started like 5 miles south or 5 miles north of where we're at now. And that was like location one at the old church. And then we just went location. We went in 10 locations all the way ending up at the current church.
Yeah.
And we shot for, I don't even know.
Well, we started at
10, 12 hours.
noon.
No, so it was probably like 9 hours.
Yeah.
By the time we were done.
Yeah. And we had a decent break while we were waiting for the sun to go down.
What was the pitfalls that we ran into? What we were essentially tasked with, how do we display, illustrate 10 years of We Are One, of this ministry? How do we show, like, what did 10 years look like? And so what were the first iterations of that? What was the first idea?
It was a time capsule.
It was going to be a time capsule. They were going to like bury a time capsule. I think this was the idea they came to us with.
Yeah.
They were going to bury a time capsule, and then when they dug it up, there's a bunch of people standing around a TV.
Well, it was going to be a bunch of people. So it was going to be kind of this story of this time capsule getting buried and like all these, like just like a couple people being around. And then when they would dig it up 10 years later, it was a big group of people showing like
showing like growth.
Yeah, it's growth. Because they wanted like some people in the original where like they would look like they did 10 years ago. It was like kind of like a goofy side. And then
that was going to be a lot of
later,
shaving faces, losing 30 pounds, cutting
hair. We're going to have to shoot it backwards. We're going to have to shoot it in reverse.
Yeah.
That was going to be really difficult.
Yeah.
So I think, that was one of my issues with it, which I think they were fine with tweaking that part of it. But then as we got deeper into it, I think I started to feel like, well, we're burying this time capsule, but the time capsule doesn't actually have anything to do with kind of the overall point of what they're using it for at this conference. Time capsule just felt sort of like it didn't fit as much. So we started having those conversations. What's that?
What are we putting in the time capsule?
Yeah, we started having and I think that was part of it, is there wasn't really anything coming out of the time capsule. So we started having those conversations, and they were totally on board, and we started fleshing out. Then we were going to put something in the time capsule. And then it was like, well, what if instead of a time capsule, it became
a DVD?
A DVD. Yeah. It was going to be like a DVD that essentially housed, we knew we had to get to the ending being a montage of 10 years.
Yeah, of them watching the montage.
Of them watching themselves over the course of how it sort of evolved over 10 years. So we knew we had to start 10 years prior, somehow jump a 10-year gap, and end up watching a montage of 10 years. So those were sort of, and this is most projects that we have to do. It's always, okay, this is where we need to end up, or this is what we need to show or illustrate, or this is where we need to start. You end up getting, it's like, is that Pythagorean's theorem? Where it's like, you need to make sure you have the angle of the triangle and one or two sides of the length of the triangle, and you can figure out the other side. Yeah. That's like what writing always, even if you're writing a feature, like even writing a film, I feel like that's always what it feels like. It's like, okay, I know I need to get here. So what's a logical way that it would make sense to sort of progress there in a way that wouldn't feel like I cheated and jumped too far? And I think that's what we were struggling with the time capsule. So we really explored this idea of the DVD for a long time.
And then it was the DVD going on a journey.
Yeah,
we
it was
decided
like,
let's ditch the time capsule side of it and follow this.
And
DVD.
the DVD was essentially becoming and it was a cool shoot. Like it actually
was
like
a cool
visually
idea.
it would have
really
been cool.
Yeah.
It was like the DVD which housed the montage of the 10 years, was sort of it was almost like a Toy Story.
Right.
Yeah. Like
sketch.
It was like, was it Jesse's like owner?
Yeah, I think that's what you kept coming back to.
In Toy Story, it's like Jessie kind of gets forgotten about as her.
She's gonna start crying.
Yeah, I do. Every time I watch it in the movie, I do. I
don't even remember the scene, and I don't remember the scene because I've never seen Toy Story 2, which is what we realized
that's
as we were.
That's my favorite one.
Because we
busted
watched
that scene because she was trying to explain
none of us
this,
remembered it. Did you?
I don't remember it right now, so probably not.
I've seen Toy Story 1 a million times. I've seen Toy Story 3.
2's way better.
Still haven't watched the Sporky one.
That's the reason why.
And apparently I haven't seen 2. Maybe I just like odd Toy Stories and I'm not an even fan.
I guess so. 2's my favorite.
But we were going to sort of anthropomorphize, personify the DVD. It was like going to become our character.
Yeah.
And so like the DVD, it was like the DVD ends up, following it. You're watching the DVD, it gets picked up, it gets handed off, it gets shoved underneath something, it gets found, it gets picked back up, it ends up on a shelf. And then we were going to like dolly in on the DVD on the shelf and have it be consistently changing.
The scene
around. The scene around it is changing a lot, which would have been really cool imagery. Showing 10 years. And then it was my brother Dave and his son were going to come in and sort of discover it 10 years later.
Yeah. Or it was like, the thought was Zealand. So his son's name is Zealand, him knocking this shelf over and them like putting a bunch of toys in a bag, and then it somehow like ends up at the location that they're going to, and they discover it. The table's wobbly.
Table has 3 legs.
Yeah,
table has 3 legs. But what you're saying.
What were you saying? You were gonna say something?
I was just saying it's kind of like I'd never actually seen it. I don't know if it's a show or a movie. The Traveling Pants.
The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
Sisterhood. Yeah. That. Is it a movie or is it
a movie and a book? I think.
In a book. Yeah.
Is that kind of like what it's like?
I don't know. I never watched it.
I never saw it either.
It just sounds like
the traveling CD.
It's the traveling CD.
Yeah, and I think that was ultimately what my problem became with it. Is I was like, man, I love the imagery.
Yeah.
I love some of the visual effect shots we would have been able to pull off because it would have looked really cool. And then it was like, we're just following a DVD. That was what the conversation switched to. Is it was like, okay, if you had to sum up 10 years of We Are One, what do you like? How do you define We Are One?
Yeah.
What have they done? And it kind of felt like the visuals we were creating were showing 10 years of We Are One is all of the moments that were had, all of the events that were had, and that's ultimately not what comes to really anyone's mind when they take a second and really think about this ministry. It was like, what is We Are One? And I think you said it's the people.
Yeah.
I was like, and we're not showing any of the people.
Yeah.
We're literally just showing a DVD. Basically, we're showing Sporky for 5 minutes or whatever it was going to be, and somehow ending in a spot where a bunch of people are there, but there was no logical context of like, why in the world are you there? Why are you watching this DVD? We sort of took their idea, and their idea made sense, even though I didn't feel like it was complete, and they didn't either. That's why they're coming to us. But like, it made sense. And then we took it and we made it make no sense. And we made it way overcomplicated.
Yeah.
And then so we like started trying to figure out how do we scale it back. And I think it finally came to a point where I was just like, that's when I asked you, what do you think of? You said people. I was like, 100%. How do we show that? How do we show the people of We Are One? And that was the movement. You know what I mean? Like those are what's represented in every event. It's not the fun that was had. It was the people that you got to meet, or the people that became a part of the family, or the people or whatever. And so when we had that idea, then I feel like that's when it started to click. And that became sort of the bedrock of like, okay, what if we went over the last 10 years and we just illustrated, for us, it was just going to be sort of metaphorically big picture, illustrate 10 years of progression, meaning 10 years of coming from this old building when there was a transfer of leadership, when it started with my brother and then it transferred to 10 years later, what does it look like now? And well, then we started writing. And then I'm calling you out, Abigail. This was Abigail, right? We talked to Abigail, who's one of the media people on the We Are One team.
Yeah.
And she informed me that her boss wanted 10 hard stops.
Yep.
That he had said very clearly that he wanted 10 literal stops so that each stop was like 2011, 2012, 2013. and it needed to be sort of sequential. Like these are the people we added in 2011. These are the people we added in 2012. And that became really overwhelming. And so we, at the very least, ditched the whole, there was no way we were going to figure out how to get, well, these people are from 2011. These people are 2014. There was no way we were going to be able to adhere to that. So we ditched that. But then we get to the day of the shoot and we were like, well, let's talk about the shoot right now. But towards the end, it was like, I was talking to Tyler and he was like, I don't remember what he asked me, but, oh yeah, he goes, are we almost done? I said, oh, I would have been done like 3 stops ago, but Dave wanted like 10 hard stops. He's like, what? No, he didn't. I was like, I was told, Abigail, I was told he wanted 10 hard, and ultimately I think it's probably something he said in passing that she probably took seriously, and maybe he actually did, but I think it worked out good because it gave us a ton of cool B-roll that we could move through quickly. But that's what became overwhelming in the shoot.
Yes.
So let's speak to that for a second, because that's what, like, oh man, I don't think I had this one wasn't as bad as I Love Christmas Parties. I Love Christmas Parties, shooting that big scene. Like, I think I had a God honest panic attack.
Yeah.
It's the only time I've ever felt that. I've always felt on shoots some version of that. It's always an extremely like overwhelming, burdensome, sort of anxious experience. But I love it because I'm an addict. But this was like kind of just overwhelming in the sense that there were so many locations and there were so many questions.
Yeah.
So that was me. I'll speak to this more in a second. I want to hear from you guys. What was like the parts of it that were you guys overwhelmed? I mean, you had a great day kind of, didn't you?
Yeah.
Your job got shifted right at the last minute.
Yeah. But I think it was that also made me stressed too. It was like, it was fun in the moment, but it was knowing
basically my daughter and
Z and
Zion and Z. Oh yeah. You didn't really do much with
your
Mana.
Your mom took Z.
Zion and Zealand.
Mainly Zion.
So my nephews, because we were pulling my brother and sister-in-law into the shoots various times, and Sid, my sister-in-law, has to be near Zion because he's brand new to the world and needs food, and she's the food. Like, it was like you ended up sort of being a babysitter for a portion of the day, which created a hole in the team of all sorts of things that we came into the shoot planning for you to carry. And this is how it always goes. It's like there's a plan, and then something, even something totally valid and necessary disrupts the plan.
Yeah.
And then we all have to scramble to sort of fill the gaps that are created, and it becomes overwhelming. So what did you actually end up feeling as the day went on?
I think I was stressed at first just because I knew how many stops there were, and I knew there was different people at every stop. Some people couldn't be here until a certain time. Some could only stay so late. And it's like, knowing you're working with so many people's schedules, it just makes you anxious because you don't want to make them wait longer than they need to.
Volunteers is hard.
Yeah. Or like making them be there sooner. Have like, we tell them to leave and meet us there, and then we're not there. And then I was just worried about that. And then not being we had a bunch of people here waiting while we were out there. And so it's like when to send them.
We were shooting all over the city, but always pretty much within 5 or 6 miles from the studio.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of people stationed here, and then they would sort of come in and out. Like, we'd have a van come meet us where we were shooting and then come back. But there was always that fear that we're going to tell them, okay, head to the next location. And then we were going to get there 30 minutes late, and they had just been sitting on this trail waiting for us to show up. And I hate that.
Yeah. And so I think I was feeling that. And then it got to the point where you guys had to take Sid for like an extended amount of time. And so I'm in the car with Zion, and then I have to start driving him around again to go to sleep, so he doesn't start like crying, or he was
stinging Zion.
I know, but he did great. But then it's like, at that point, then I can't even communicate of like, I don't know where you guys are at. I don't know who you need, and I don't know who's at the studio waiting. Yeah. And so that's when it fell on Abigail. And it was like, once I saw everybody was getting there when they needed to, it was like, okay, I know Abigail has this. Like, she's got it all in her head even more than I did, because she planned it. So it's like,
I will say that I called you out earlier and it was valid. But Abigail came in clutch on this one.
Yeah.
I think everything with conference, actually, what was cool about it is sort of the synergy between both teams.
Yeah.
Like, working with 2 teams of creatives. Like, our creativity and the things we excel at, meeting the things that they are genuinely creative at and they excel at, and sort of meshing those together, actually worked really well.
Yeah.
And I think this shoot was kind of a good picture of that. Like, there was...
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
We could have pulled it off on our own. It would have been really we would have had to have you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we didn't have
sure.
Abigail.
Yeah.
For sure.
But because you were incapacitated with other stuff on, just so happened that way.
Yeah.
Abigail being able to step in was super, super helpful because she knew the shoot, she knew the vision and the goal of what we were trying to accomplish, and she sort of synced with us on that before stepping in. And so when she stepped in, it wasn't just frivolous hands. And a lot of times that's what you end up with people on a shoot. It's like they desperately want to help, but it's like, you don't understand what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know you mean well, but you are not actually helpful right now because asking me what you can do is not helpful. We talked about this at that leadership lean, and it was like, that is what overwhelmed me. That's what overwhelmed me. Like that's the thing that gets to me. And I don't have a personality that tends to like blow a gasket most times, but I was there as far as my personality goes at this shoot. It was like literally God's honest truth. This is how it feels to be a director in indie productions. I think this is why there's so much hierarchy in larger scale productions, so that only certain people have access to the people that are actually making decisions. Because what happens in these smaller scale productions that we tend to do is if I'm directing and I'm sort of trying to figure out the vision, what I'm doing is I'm going, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. What's next? And there's all the insecurities that I'm working through, trying to be met by, okay, but what is the vision? What do I know how to do? How do I take this in small steps? How do I take this in small bites? What do we need to do next? What shots do we have to get? How do we communicate this? And you're sort of wrestling through that whole thing. And then you're doing that and somebody comes up and they go, hey, what do you want me to do with this? And you go, just take care of it. And literally as you're answering this, someone goes, but what do we do with this? And I go, you do that. And then but what do we do? And you go, I just have enough questions. And I was thinking to myself getting in one of the vans at one point, because I'm also having to like act in certain moments in this. I ran a camera at certain moments.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself at some point, I have enough questions of my own. I am as confused as everyone else. And I know I'm not. Like, I know practically I have way more experience than most, any of those volunteers who have never done this kind of stuff. But that's what it feels like a lot of times, is it's like, I don't know what I'm doing either. Okay. And all the questions just overwhelm me to the point that I actually don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think that was the moment. There's one moment in it where I feel like we didn't do it well, if I'm totally honest. There's one moment where we finished the shoot. Did we shoot on a Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shot on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday morning, I woke up and literally from like a dead sleep, I went, we didn't get this shot, that shot, or this shot. The cut's not going to make sense. Like straight up. Out of a dead sleep, I literally was like, oh my goodness, we didn't get these shots. We didn't get these shots. And that was the moment where like the overwhelming, the million questions I think got to me. And I fumbled the ball right there. Like it was a spot where like, if we had just, I thought the clock was getting to us. It didn't. We actually had more time than I realized, which was frustrating. We got done early and then people ended up having to wait because we were waiting for the sun to go down. And I thought we were going to be chasing the sun. It was a whole thing. Let's talk to this before we move on to the other sketch. Was there anything else that you guys specifically felt before we move on to the other video?
I think technically, it was just, I wish we would have shot all one cam. I wish we would have used the red on everything.
Yes.
Because in my opinion, the red, not in my opinion, it's just factual. The red looks way better. That's way more fun to grade. It's just looks better. But
so explain that. Why do you say that? What did we do? What happened?
So we had to split up at one point. So we had like I think initially we were going to shoot everything on.
We shot this technically on 4 cameras.
Yeah. Was it 4 cameras?
Well, we started out on the 6K.
Yeah.
With the ND filters. And then we noticed basically we were getting what's called IR pollution. So we were getting infrared pollution and it tints I don't know if we have footage that we can show. I don't know if we ended up with anything, but it basically tints shadows like blacks, like the shirt, like purple. It's really nasty. And certain cameras have real issues with it. Well, start off on that. And then we had a second 6K in the car. That was only for high speed stuff.
Right.
And then we transitioned to the red. And then we were using that janky Walmart camcorder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so technically we used footage from 4 cameras all in in one cut.
But the camcorder was intentional for a style that was
that was my nod and my homage and my love towards specifically Tyler and Abigail, because I think it actually did. It worked
cool
really well.
thing.
It was a nice
fun.
touch, but I wouldn't have thought to do that if it was one of our pieces that we were doing
true.
for us. This was a client job. Like that was the mindset going in. It was like, what do you guys need? How can we service the vision you guys are trying to communicate? And what is even tonally, even like when we started screwing around with the way we graded this with that film emulation and all that kind of stuff, like that to me, I would have tried it either way, but I really was thinking that way because I was trying to find ways to make it look like a little bit more conducive to their brand, things that sort of they naturally do.
Yeah. We would have had more time and I would have remembered that we had that film emulation that we wanted to try that beforehand. I graded it first and then put the film emulation on it. And what I wish I would have done was just like what we did with the other sketch, was put the film emulation on it.
It's hard to say.
I know. It is really hard to say.
So were you frustrated that we switched cameras? Like, did that just get in your head and you felt anxious while we were shooting that you were doing it wrong? Or like,
I don't ever really feel anxious with that kind of stuff.
I don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong.
No.
Yeah,
I mostly just do everything right.
Yeah.
And even if I'm not doing it right, I assume it's right.
Yeah. Well, I don't get anxious with that kind of stuff. Like it bothers me more after in the edit. But I think though, one thing that bugged me the most was when I watched it in room, like when it was actually going on. Well, I wasn't in room, but like when I saw it like on the screens, it comes to a point. I don't even remember what point it was, where like it's like we're big on the music. The music's been going for a while. We go to a lull point in the music, or the music stops or something like that. And then we go back into the music. I thought it just fell flat on its face after that. I thought the music didn't go anywhere. It was like music is big here, lull, and we just go back into the same exact music. When I wish what we would have done was go a little bit smaller music here, lull, and then big music over here. Because it just felt like we came back up to the same spot and it just kind of fell flat.
All right, shots fired.
Ouch. Okay.
It wasn't at you. I
think we
it was my edit.
We talked about that because that's what I felt too. Not in that sense. I was like, I feel like we need to go into a different song here. Mm-hmm. And I felt like,
but it felt weird going into 3 different songs.
Yes, and that's what we struggled against, and that's why we ended up doing. I don't know if there was another part in that song.
I did transition it to the bigger part of the song, but the problem is we'd already gone through literally the whole song.
Yeah. And it's tough because this was like licensed royalty stock music that we're pulling from somewhere else. This isn't us scoring a song specifically for the job.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if we were going to go do this, if this was a $200,000 commercial project for a big corporate client, we'd probably try to at least get some way to score it so that's more specific to the gig.
Yeah.
Something like
more
this where we're on a time constraint and
through
it's, there's just projects that you devote every resource you have to.
Yeah.
And there's stuff where you do it the best you can on sort of minimal resources. This was both of these projects, which we're just going to finish. I'm making a decision on the fly. We're going to finish talking about this and then we're going to go into a part 2 of this, which will be another episode where we actually talk about the sketch. So let's just take some time and finish talking through sort of what we processed on this one. Like, what did you feel in the edit then?
In the edit?
Well, do you want to talk about the day of shooting more? I feel like we haven't talked at all about the post side of it.
I think the main thing with the day of shooting is kind of like how you wish we would have just started on the red. Mm-hmm. I wish we would have just started with the audio recorder too. So I ended up running sound, which wasn't originally the plan, but it fell that way. And I think that was the right call anyway, because nobody else was trained to do it besides like me and Lindsay's a babysitter at this point. So I think that worked out like better that way. But I was I don't even think I told you this. I was so intentional with the audio in like that first sketch where like I mic'd down to get his feet and I like mic'd like certain areas
when it's just Dave and he's walking away.
Yeah. Like in the beginning up top, and none of that was usable because it was all in camera audio. And so it like had that terrible hiss.
The mic was going straight into camera, or the mic was going into the audio?
The mic was going straight into camera.
Because we used the 6K instead of the red.
Yeah, because we started off on the 6K. So it was like all of that ended up not being... So that was one of those
situations where we cut a corner, not really expecting it to be necessary. And then it bit us in the butt later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then by the time that we finally ditched the audio recorder because it was kind of becoming a hassle.
This is 6K, right?
So let's explain that for a sec to people who aren't like familiar with this. There's 2 ways that we shoot video and audio. One is like what I'll call single system, where it's like these cameras, if we're using one of these cameras, we will often run a microphone directly connected to the camera. Mm-hmm. So lower quality audio. The camera is great for the camera. It's fine for the audio, but the camera was designed to produce an image, not to produce audio. What we are recording these audio on is a very, an audio recorder that's significantly nicer, and it was built just to record good audio. So when we're shooting on the red, we're always shooting double system or 2 system audio, where the red is only for producing the image, and the audio is only for producing audio, and then those 2 get married together in the computer. what we did is we started this recording the audio straight into one of these cameras.
Yeah.
So she's saying it was a lower quality. It had some background noise. It was a lower bit depth. I mean, it was kind of everything that would lower the quality.
Yeah.
When we transitioned, because we weren't frustrated with the audio when we transitioned, that we probably didn't even know that it sounded bad.
Yeah. No, we had
we were
no
just
idea.
flying at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
We were frustrated with the image, getting all of that nasty infrared pollution.
Yes.
So we switched over to the red because that has corrections built into the sensor. At which point we were forced to switch.
Yeah, we had to switch. Yeah, and which is obviously it's a better sound, it's better quality. But by that point, the audio was no longer even really useful because we never used it after that beginning part, except for
what we really needed it for was the first part where we botched it.
Yeah, which we thought total reverse. We were like, oh, we'll just switch to it now. It's no big deal. And then by the time it just kind of became a hassle because it's a rig. You commit to it the whole day. You have a whole harness on, you have a whole thing. But then it was like becoming a hassle to try to get it in and out of the van and all of this stuff. So we just ditched it. 'Cause we're like, well, we're just doing high speed. Well, we didn't get any during.
Meaning when we're shooting, there's shooting regular speed, which is when you're syncing audio. So you have the audio at regular speed, the camera at regular speed, they'll sync up well. And then they're shooting MOS, which is motion without sound. I can't remember what it stands for, but it basically means you're shooting something that doesn't require sound. So if I'm shooting high speed, meaning for shooting something that gets it gets turned into slow motion, the video is being slowed down past what happened in real time, which means the audio won't marry to it. It doesn't. It's like your mouth is going visually, but audio it just goes Steve, and they don't match up. Like the audio is done way before the video.
Right.
So when we transitioned,
most
of what we were doing at that point didn't need audio.
It didn't need audio, but then we went into that last little bit of the sketch where he gets out of the van. And there's all the people lined up, and we didn't get audio for that.
As I said, that was bad audio. I remember hearing the production
because there
audio.
was no audio. Yeah,
I remember getting to that point and having a little anxiety attack when I saw the first cut because I was like, we need this production audio. So you're saying all of that was replaced? That was all sound effects?
That was all. Yeah. So everything, like I had to go and find it all and like through SoundSnap and.
So what does that process look like? We can't go super deep into it, but like what did you end up having to do?
So what I ended up having to do was whatever I could salvage from the 6K, I took, but most of it had
6K are these cameras. She's saying the trash audio.
Yep. So when we were recording in camera, what I was able to salvage from that I used. So like I was able to get the van shutting, like the door shutting. That wasn't terrible.
So the door shutting was production audio?
Yes.
That wasn't fake?
Yep, that was production. I was able to still use his footsteps, which was
actually
nice.
Surprising. I would have assumed all of the opposite.
No, but
I would have assumed that we replaced the door and the footsteps.
No, but what I could not salvage, I don't know if it was just way too low or what, was the ambience. I could not salvage the ambience. I had to keep it so low because I still had it in there.
Did you replace it and just put different road noise over it?
I had it layered. Yeah. So I had it in there because I still got like the squeak of the door opening and like different things like that. But I had to keep it so low and put over it. I did like I found like some ambience from Thai that is
Thailand.
like people,
Thailand,
like people talking and there's birds and stuff. It worked.
And that's really common. So like what would most of the time happen in like a high budget production, even what we would do in a lot of these situations, that's like, I think why I'm surprised the way we did it is we would just gut all of it. Is it would just go, okay, production just doesn't sound good. It's like, have you ever watched behind the scenes on like Avengers and somebody's flying and yelling their lines and they're blowing wind at them? You know what happens when someone is yelling their lines into a microphone that they're blowing a fan at? It sounds like this. So all of that audio just literally gets cut out, and then they come in after the fact and they watch themselves going, I've come to avenge my brother. I go, okay, you ready? They go, I've come to avenge my brother. And they mouth it and they say it after the fact and replace their dialogue. And then they replace the sound of the cape fake. And they replace the sound of the wind fake. And they, you know what I mean? Like we would rebuild footsteps from sound effects or make them ourselves. We would rebuild the road noise. We'd rebuild the door shutting, all of those things, which I feel like arguably may have even been easier, not to put you on blast, but.
Well, it maybe, because I asked you this the other day. I said, is it better to just completely start from scratch or try to keep as much as you can of the original? Because I don't know.
I thought you were talking about relationships when you asked that.
Oh.
I thought there was like a new guy and you're like, is it better to like, I'm just kidding. It's a joke.
There's not.
Is it better to just start over? Or is it better to salvage the original?
Oh, no. Anyway, but no, because for some reason, I don't know why I lean this way. Maybe I'm just like, I don't even know if you could call it like being a purist or not, but I really like trying to salvage the original audio.
Yeah, as much as we can use any visual or audio information that we actually did on set or on location. If we can actually use it, it's always better.
Yeah. So what
it's
I
just
tend
not
to
always
do,
easier.
No, I don't know. Maybe I just like to do things the hard way, but I like to try to like keep as much of it as possible and then use sound effects and other things to enhance it. Mm-hmm. So it's like in one of our sketches that we'll talk about later, there's a arrow in it. And with that, I kept the actual sound of it whizzing by. I kept the actual sound of it hitting the side of the building, but I used like slap and hit and wood cracking sound effects to enhance it. Mm-hmm. But I always like to try to keep the original as much as possible. It's like always a goal. Mm-hmm. So what I ended up doing for the section where we didn't record audio was I actually took all the stuff that I was able to salvage in the first sketch, brought it over to that one, and then did the same type of thing where I just layered it with a bunch of things that I found on.
And so you put new footsteps under him walking. You put the squeak of the door, or you salvaged all that?
I salvaged that. Yeah.
Cool. Mm-hmm. It's actually, I would have assumed the footsteps would have been replaced.
No,
I didn't listen to him that closely. You can't get it actually by me, but
I was very intentional about those footsteps. I was very proud of them.
All right. Okay. So we're going to wrap this one up. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you learned something about stress management in overwhelming situations. But we're going to wrap this one up. We're going to actually just do this as a two-parter and we're going to get into the next episode. Mm-hmm. Thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and subscribe. More stuff coming out regularly. Hit the like button. We'd appreciate it. We love you. Thanks for sticking around. This has been Filmmakers Making Films. I said it correctly.
Woohoo! Yay!
So like my first ticket when I was 16 years old and I had my license for 7 days. And I think I was on my first date with my first girlfriend. Was for taking the authorized personnel only turnarounds on the expressway.
I
just saw the light. Yeah, I learned it. It's not like I didn't know it was illegal. I just thought I'd be fine. What are the odds? Apparently 100% are the odds.